Hello, everyone. I am Ginny Spicer, a member of the Interplanetary Networking Special Interest Group and a member of its Technical Documentation Working Group. Today, I am joined by Vint Cerf and Scott Burleigh, and we're very happy to introduce the Interplanetary Networking Special Interest Group and the Zotero Library. To start off, Vint, you are the co-inventor of the internet, chief internet evangelist at Google. I see accolades along all of the wall behind you. I was hoping that we can ask you some questions about how IPNSIG got started. So can you give us a bit of the background?
Absolutely. Some of you may remember that Pathfinder landed on Mars successfully in 1997 after 20 years of failures. And that got me to thinking. And the next spring in 1998, I went out to the Jet Propulsion Lab and met with Adrian Hook and Scott and others who were working on space communications for exploration at the Jet Propulsion Lab. And we began to talk about what we should be doing then in 1998 in preparation for what might happen 25 years later. And we concluded that what we should be working on is the interplanetary extension of the internet to support manned and robotic space exploration. And so that was very exciting and something, just a fabulous beginning of what sounds like a science fiction story, but it's really engineering. And about that same time, the Internet Society, which I had helped to found in 1992, was starting to have chapters around the world. And so I thought we should have an interplanetary networking special interest group to focus exactly on this whole question of interplanetary networking. So we started it about the same time. And there's a small little group of people who were working at JPL. Eventually that expanded to include most of the labs at NASA, and now even more so now the other space agencies like ESA, JAXA, CARI, and so on. So the special interest group, in my view, was a place where people with a common interest in space communications could meet and learn about what's happening in that space and even possibly contribute to it.
That's excellent. I know that I definitely have enjoyed being a member of the group. Can you tell us a bit about what IPNSIG has accomplished since its inception?
Well, most of it started out as just simply keeping people apprised of what's going on, reporting about delay and disruption tolerant networking, the bundle protocols, and the bundle protocol suite that has emerged out of that. And Scott Burleigh, of course, has had an enormous amount to do with the actual implementation of these concepts into real code. More recently, we've added some leadership to the organization. Yosuke Kaneko is our chairman now. He works at JAXA. And laid out a pretty significant program of development for the IPNSIG, one of which was to look at strategy for causing an interplanetary internet backbone to be created and sustainable, among other working groups on projects, for example, that would demonstrate the utility of our bundle protocol suite, or even thinking our way through technical documentation to make sure that people could find out more about details. So there are a number of working groups that have been created. We just recently released a strategy report. It's about a 50-page summary of what can happen and what we hope will happen as this effort to build and operate and sustain an interplanetary backbone gets underway. So we're in the early stages right now of organizing the other working groups, one of which is the technology working group, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. So it's beginnings of real concrete efforts by the special interest group to contribute to this big vision.
That's excellent. With you and Yosuke on the board, and I believe, Scott, you are also on the board, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So
actually, Scott is vice chairman of the board, just to give him his due.
You got the dream team assembled.
Yeah, Yosuke does all the work, and I stand by and applaud.
With this team, what do you see as the goal of the IPNSIG moving forward? What do you hope it does next?
My answer to this question is that IPNSIG can do a number of things. First of all, its members, of which number in about 700 all around the world now, can certainly help to promote the idea of an interplanetary backbone network that could be operated by a mixture of private sector and government organizations in somewhat the same way that the internet came together with a number of different organizations building their pieces of it and interconnecting in order to be supportive of all of the work that's going on. So that's one thing that we can do. That's on the promotion side. The second thing we can do is help to actually test these protocols at scale. So the project working group intends to develop applications that could be running on a laptop or a mobile or Raspberry Pi or something, and on the clouds that Amazon and Azure at Microsoft and Google's cloud could all be servers using the interplanetary protocols in order to test them at scale. The network management and security and everything need to be evaluated and hardened. We'd like to do that work terrestrially because it's easier to fix when you're here on this planet than it is to deal with something that's 250 million miles away. So we'd like the Interplanetary Networking Group to help us make these things more reliable. And then there's the question of what business models are going to make sense for a mixture of government and private sector operation. So I see the Interplanetary Network Group as a facilitator of the evolution of the backbone and creating incentives for the various parties to engage.
Personally, I love what the IPNSIG has done. I'm happy to be a member, and one of our recent projects was the Zotero Library. Scott Burleigh, you are our fearless leader in the Technical Documentation Working Group. You are co-creator of the Interplanetary Overlay Network, co-author of the Bundle Protocol, and the former principal engineer at the Jet Propulsion Lab.
A formal engineer. It's an honorific. There are plenty of principal engineers at JPL.
But that doesn't mean you stop working, and we're relying on the fact that Scott still has his fingers in the publicly available ION code. That's a bundle protocol implementation that's available on. Is it still on GitHub or SourceForge?
It's still on SourceForge.
That's right.
And I believe even after I've left JPL, the ION development team at JPL is going to be continuing to issue new releases with new features and bug fixes for the next several years. The software, I think, has reached a stage of maturity. I'd say it's quite close to being something that we don't need to do an awful lot of new development on, and we can concentrate on deployment and development of applications for it.
Well, we certainly are going to test that, because if we take the ION implementation of the bundle protocol and put it into the servers of the cloud and put it into laptops and put it into mobiles running on Android, for example, then we will certainly get a sense for how it performs at scale with large numbers of people generating traffic, and seeing how we can get the network management system to function smoothly and easily. Can people get in and get out? How about the contact graph calculations? All of that stuff will get a severe test if the IPNSIG group is successful in this terrestrial deployment.
It's a little bit not quite on the not bearing all that closely on the library, but that's I feel that what you're saying there is very important. That the big remaining challenge in interplanetary networking is scalability. How do you scale the technology that we've developed? How do you scale it up to thousands or millions of nodes? Because currently that's quite difficult. And I think we're close to having some answers for that, and I'm looking forward to getting a chance to exercise that within the project working group.
So we would not succeed in that effort, however, without the library, because the library has all the documentation that we need for people to learn how to do this. You know, how does it work and what does it do and where do I get it? How do I configure it? That library is going to be a very important historical source as well as a current source of documentation of the present state of the protocol designs.
I believe that's exactly right.
So that's, and the Zotero is an extraordinarily flexible design that I'm using it in some other nonprofit operations as well, partly on the strength of what I've already seen happen here at the IPNSIG.
Yeah, I think it was a real find coming across it and deciding to use it for structuring the library. I think it's going to be excellent.
Well, it turns out that it helps a lot if you know a lot about how that works, or how Zotero works, so that you can make it, you know, stand on its hind legs and sing. Yeah. And that's exactly what our team has been able to do.
It's great, some great features.
So, with how flexible Zotero is and how much information we have been able to pack into this library, Scott, who do you hope will be able to use this library?
In my mind, I think we principally want to make the material accessible to students, maybe even as young as junior high, who are interested in exploration of space and the technology to support that, and educators certainly, and interested non-engineers. I think the library needs to be as public facing as we can manage it, and at the same time provide enough depth to be useful to network technologists and even spaceflight mission engineers. You think about interplanetary networking, it's been an active field of research for over 20 years now, and there's been a lot of good work published, and you can certainly track all those papers down by searching the internet, but that can be very time consuming, and it's not ideal if you don't know exactly what you're looking for. So what I hope we're going to be able to do with this library is make those searches a little easier, provide some context so that when people come across items that don't bear on what they're interested in, they can know that immediately and skip over to something else. But maybe most important, enable the sort of random browsing through related, maybe even distantly related publications that you can do in a physical library or in a bookstore. I think that capability is going to end up being extremely important for bringing the interplanetary networking forward.
So you're actually raising an interesting speculation. There were people who thought that these digital libraries would be bad because they would give you exactly what you needed, and you'd never get the serendipity you would get if you were poking around in the stacks of the library, pulled the book out, and discovered the book next to it was more interesting than the one that you just pulled out. Yeah. I can guarantee you that the search engines that I have available anyway still inject a fair amount of serendipity into the story. But Zotero, anyway, it can be structured so as to allow you to discover its contents in the serendipitous way, as well as in the...
I'm actually looking forward to using it myself.
Yeah, there's some very interesting pieces in there. In putting it together, I kept having to stop to say, oh, autonomous underwater vehicles. Oh, robot teams.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, what we really want to do, I think, to make that kind of exploration possible is collect all the research papers that we can find, but also collect related material on people's experience with the technology, experience with delay-tolerant networking, experience with flight projects, with communication in flight projects, and thoughts on how the technology can be used and evolve over time.
So this is actually a very important perspective that Scott is offering. Let me give you a parallel. I sit on the board of the Folger Shakespeare Library, which was created back in the 1930s. And of course, you could say, well, Shakespeare, we have all of his plays. What else do we need? And the answer is, well, if you really want to understand Shakespeare, you need to understand the context in which the plays were written. And so the library has accumulated an enormous amount of information about the Elizabethan period, which is when the plays were prepared. And understanding the context of those plays is aided vastly by having access to all this other Elizabethan content. And the same argument can be made for understanding what's going on in the interplanetary internet, is having a lot of the contextual information that Scott's referencing available at your fingertips.
I think even the basic the fundamental variance between delay tolerant and non-delay tolerant communication is something that I hope will emerge from collecting this material. I think it's a profound concept that can contribute in a lot of ways. I mean, yeah, underwater vehicles, but that's different enough from spaceflight communications to make the point. But I think it doesn't hint at the wide variety of venues where this concept has got utility.
Well, I can imagine a little introductory essay, the title of which would be "Ping is Not Your Friend." And for people, network engineers who are accustomed to the low latency internet, learning how to think in terms of delay and disruption tolerance teaches you very early on the first lesson, which is ping is not your friend.
I think it's mind expanding. Yeah.
So in the development of this library, it's been such an honor to be on this team. So I wanted to say thank you, Scott, for that experience. In wrapping up, I know you both have been very busy and I really appreciate your time today. Are there any other comments that you would like to share?
Well, I would certainly want to offer to people who happen to be watching this video that come and visit IPNSIG.org, have a look at the library, have a look at our strategic report, and think about what you might do to help us make the interplanetary internet real.
And I would like to interject a note of thanks and appreciation to all the people that have been working on the technical documentation library. There's a technical documentation working group that has been very energetically engaged in this endeavor for many months now, and I think the results are going to be really valuable to a lot of people.
All right. Well, the link to the library and the IPNSIG blog will be below. Thank you both very much for your time. This is Ginny. I'm signing off. It's been excellent to talk to you guys.
It's a real pleasure. We'll see you on the net.
Bye, Ginny.
Ad Astra.